All right, we've got folks from all over, and people are still joining in. I guess we can get started. Hi, everybody. My name's Carrie Diamond. I'm the founder of Cherry Bombe and the host of Radio Cherry Bombe. And I want to welcome all of you to our very first Sip and Draw evening. I'm so excited about this. We've got a lot of fun stuff that we're going to be doing tonight. Artist and illustrator Volta Voloshin-Smith will be joining us shortly. Volta, a lot of you I'm sure follow her on Instagram. She's Color Snack. She is a Bomb Squad member. She has a new book out all about her watercolors, and she is going to walk us through how to do our own watercolors tonight. And I was saying earlier, I've always in my brain been that person who paints watercolors to like relax and, you know, do something on the weekends that's not work. And I've never been that person, even though in my head I am that person. So I'm hoping now after tonight, I will become that person with Volta's help. So Volta is going to join us in just a few minutes, and walking us through the exercise with Volta is Nancy Pappas, who is our art director. And Nancy happens to be based in Seoul. So it is very early in the morning for Nancy, but we're going to see her. I think she's had some coffee. So we're going to see her in just a little bit. And now I would like to welcome to the screen Rachel McAleesang, who is our friend from Bouvet. Hello, you have a gorgeous.
Hi, Carrie.
Rachel is our friend from Bouvet La de Bay, and Bouvet is our gracious sponsor for the evening. And I've got my Bouvet. I want to turn the bottle so you can see it. It's very shiny in my apartment right now, because usually it's either a dark hole or it's like, you know, like a construction site blasted with light. So, oh, there you go. You can see it there. So anyway, this is Bouvet La de Bay. We're going to be talking about it tonight. I've got my coupe. I don't know what everyone is drinking from tonight, but I don't have a lot of family heirlooms, and this coupe was actually my grandmother's. So I'm
Beautiful.
very excited. I love to drink from it. I only have 2 left. 2 of them have broken over the years. So that was just a terrible pour. So Rachel, I know you've been a somm for a long time, so do not judge me on that pour.
Oh, I'm not judging at all. It looks great.
Better than
that. As long as it's in your glass.
Right, I didn't miss the glass. So I want to, I also want to mention Donna, our membership director, says hello to everybody. Donna is very lucky. She happens to be in Napa, talk about wine. Donna is in Napa tonight for a special project that we're doing. So if you jump on Instagram later, you'll see what Donna is up to. But we're so lucky to have Rachel here. Rachel is a French portfolio specialist. She works with our friends at Co-Brand and is an expert on Bouvet La de Bay. Rachel is a sommelier. She's done so many things. You have fallen in love with wine in Italy. You worked at Bazaar by Jose Andres. You worked at Meadowood, which is a fabulous place. You are also an expert in lots of other beverages like sake. You surf. You are a native Los Angelian?
Los Angelina, yes.
And I was reading Rachel's bio and I was like, oh my God, she sounds like a James Bond character. So I was just so taken with everything that you've done. I was like, oh my gosh, this like surfing, champagne drinking, international world traveling, you know, amazing person. So welcome to the Bomb Squad, Rachel. We're super
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me.
So tell me what we're drinking.
So this is Bouvet La de Bay, family owned and operated. It's run by the Monmuseau family. And I think it's such a perfect pairing with the watercolor class because the Monmuseau family really believes that wine is a living art. So they have a contemporary art center in the winery, and they also Juliette, who is the current CEO. It's a female-led winery in the Loire Valley. She's very invested in art and wine. So I think this is just the perfect evening to have both together. It's the perfect pairing.
Oh my gosh, Volta and Nancy, I think we need to do a road trip of sorts. Can't exactly road trip over to the Loire Valley, but that would be a fun trip. Bouvet La de Bay has been around for a while.
Yes.
How is the house?
Yes, so it was founded in 1851 by Etienne Bouvet. So they're one of France's greatest producers of method traditionnel sparkling wine in the Loire Valley. So this particular Bouvet is a combination of Chenin Blanc, which is an indigenous grape to the Loire Valley, and then it also has Chardonnay. So it's really beautiful. It's a nice alternative to champagne. It doesn't break the bank. And I think it's something that you can drink on a daily basis if you wanted to, or at a watercolor class. It's perfect for happy hour.
I love that. So when we're tasting something like this, what are the flavor notes that we should be looking for in a excellent sparkling wine?
Yes. So what I like to do when I taste wines, whether it's sparkling wines or still wines, I use this really short acronym called FUSE. It stands for fruit, earth, wood, and spice. So FEWS.
Wait, say that one more time. Fruit, earth, wood, spice.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So it's very simple. Really, when I'm enjoying wine or appreciating wine, a lot of the enjoyment is from your senses. So really looking at what you have in your glass. So this obviously is going to be light because it's light in color. I love the pinpoint bubbles in this wine. It really shows a testament of the quality when you can see the fine bubbles coming through the glass. And then when you smell it, for me, I get notes of brioche and pear and honeysuckle. It's very well balanced. And these are, again, lighter notes. And then when I taste it on the palate, I hope everyone has it in their glass at the moment, but if not, you can always buy it at a later time. But on the palate, again, it's just really a nice aperitif. It can even be a digestif, but I just love that effervescence. It's very elegant. It's a beautiful finish. So I use all of my senses, and then I also use that acronym. So I'm smelling, pears and a little bit of like a green apple, maybe a white cherry.
So beautiful. Honeysuckle and pear blossom are two, and brioche. I mean, those are all
Yes.
my favorite fragrances. As you were describing those, I was like, oh my gosh, I would love those in an actual fragrance. I would wear a sparkling wine fragrance in a heartbeat.
Right. I'm sure somebody has invented that already. But
So Rachel, is that a photo of the winery behind you?
Yes. So
Wow.
This is a photo of the winery. It's a beautiful place. I hope everyone has the opportunity to visit the Loire Valley one day. But when I think about different wine regions in the world, the Loire Valley strikes me as just a wine region full of castles, and it's very storybook. So they have a carriage. You can take a carriage tour through the winery. There are underground cellars called tuffeau, and this type of stone is used to really preserve and age the wines. And it's perfect temperature for making sparkling wine, just like Bouvet.
So tell us, because we always love to know about different women in the Bombe Squad and their careers. How did you wind up in the world of wine?
Oh my gosh, I think it's a long story, but I think it really was a journey of passion. So in my undergraduate studies, I studied business, and I worked for amazing CEOs and CFOs. And every Friday after work, I would actually go to a wine tasting, and it was so much fun, and I never thought it would become or turn into a career for me. But I went to wine tastings. I would just come casually, and I loved learning. I bought the Wine Bible. I bought many books, and actually started moonlighting at Disneyland. I'm not sure if people know, at Disney's California Adventure, there was a wine area there. So I applied for a position there. It was called a wine ambassador position, and I got the job. I worked on the weekends, Saturday, Sunday, and then I would have my full-time job during the week. But on the weekends, I had so much fun. I would talk about wine. I would engage with guests at the park about wine.
Oh my God! That's so
yeah,
much.
And
you did not have to wear a costume to do this.
We actually did have to wear a winery costume, unfortunately.
What was the winery costume?
It was not very flattering, but we did it.
You weren't like a character from Beauty and the Beast or something, right?
No. I think, yeah, it's different specs for that, right?
That's so, I mean, that sounds like so much fun, not only at the Magic Kingdom, but that must have just been a really fun way to discover more wine on your own and also introduce people to the beauty and fun of wine.
It was really fun. And it was there where I met my first mentor, who was a master sommelier. His name is Michael Jordan, not the basketball player, but he's a master of wine. And he's like a short Italian bald guy, but he's great. And he really taught me so much about wine. He took me through the sommelier exams. So I passed my level 1 and my level 2 sommelier with him. And he really just, one day he tapped me on the shoulder and said, Rachel, you're so talented at wine. Have you ever thought about becoming a sommelier? And I just thought in my brain, how do you do that? And it was just history from there.
Wow. So for our folks in the audience, if they want to learn more about wine, sparkling wine, what do you recommend for them?
I think there are so many paths, but, classes like this and just getting out there, trying wines, meeting different people. Books are a great resource. These classes are fantastic. So I think just the more you can learn about the intricacies of the different wines and the different regions, I think that really gives you a door open. For me, I never thought it would be a full-time career. I was just so curious about I honestly felt like every time I tasted a wine from a different region, that it instantly transported me to that region. So if I was having an Italian wine from Chianti Classico, I can really imagine the cobblestone roads and the Ponte Vecchio and, the salami and cheese that you would have and the gelato. So for me, it was like traveling in my head. So it's a doorway to the world.
Absolutely. Are you one of the only surfing sommeliers?
I think there must be more. There must be more. There has to be.
That's a good
The ocean
idea
is beautiful.
If no one's taken surfing sommelier or surfing som, someone must have snagged that on Instagram. And I love the term used. I never heard that before. Pinpoint bubbles.
Yes.
That sounds so romantic. So those are the tiny bubbles.
Yes.
In the Bouvet Latte Bay that we're drinking right now.
Absolutely. It's really a testament of the quality, and to achieve that in a wine is very difficult. So and they do use the champagne method champenoise.
Okay, so we're looking for tiny, tiny bubbles, folks. All right, my last question for you, Rachel, and I hope you stay with us, and I hope you're going to paint a little tonight, or at least hang out with us.
I will.
What Volta and Nancy are up to. Is there going to be a sparkling wine shortage this holiday season, or is this a rumor?
I hope not, but let's cross our fingers. I hope everyone is drinking sparkling wine, champagne this holiday season, and I hope we will have enough of it.
Me too. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our friends at Bouvet Latte Bay. And I know a lot of you won the gift certificate. So I hope you use it to buy a bottle of Bouvet Latte Bay. And whether you're drinking it tonight or saving it for Thanksgiving, it is a beautiful sparkling wine with food. I mean, I think it just goes so lovely with anything you might be eating, this holiday season, whether it's, what is nice about this? I feel like savory and sweet, it goes with either because it's not too sweet at all. So yeah, when I first tried it, I was like, oh, this is beautiful. I could eat this with like a meal or have this at dessert. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Champagne sparkling wines are very versatile. So you can actually have it at every point in the meal. So it's really fun.
Great. Well, Rachel, I hope we get to talk to you again. This was a lot of fun. And I hope we all get to go to the Loire Valley and go see Bouvet Latte Bay one day and see and what a coincidence that they are big champions of art and have an art collection at the winery. I personally would love to see that one day.
It was meant to be. So thank you for having us.
Oh, great. All right. Well, Rachel, like I said, welcome to the Bomb Squad.
Thank you.
Now we're going to patch in Nancy and Volta. All right. Thank you so much, Rachel. Nancy and Volta, are you both out there? Like I said, Nancy is hello. Nancy is Cherry Bomb's art director. She is in Seoul, Korea right now. So we are getting Nancy at a very early time, but it's never too early for art, right, Nancy?
Exactly.
Might be too early to drink, but it's not too early for art.
I got some mock stuff going on.
And Volta, it's so nice to see you. How are you?
Hi, Carrie. It's so great to be here. Honestly, it's such an honor to be doing this class for our members.
It's an honor for us. And Volta is a member of the Bomb Squad, and that's how we got acquainted with Volta. And oh, my cat just jumped up, so she wants to say hi. I think
Hi,
Dusty.
Dusty. But I just want to thank you. This is an exclusive class that we did for members. We love our members, and we're so excited to start to do more like hands-on classes, such as this one in Volta. I have a feeling it won't be the only class that we do with you. And I'm going to pass it over to you two. We'd love to hear a little bit about your book and what you do. And just thank you for being such a great member. You came to all the member meetings. That's how we got to know you. I think during the networking, which is so much fun. We'll have more of that, you know, in the months ahead. I will come back at the end. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and Nancy, I'll keep an eye on that as Volta is walking us through the watercolor instruction. So I'll see everybody in a little while. Have fun. Thank you again, Volta. And thank you, Rachel, and our friends at Bouvet La Dube. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Carrie.
Hi, Volta.
Hi,
So yes, hi everyone. I'm Nancy. I'm the art director. My pronouns are she, her, and I am so excited that you're here and that everyone's here to paint with us. And yes, as Carrie said, it is 8 a.m. in Korea, and so I have my sparkling wine. But I had to be here drinking with you guys. So Volta, I have a couple questions for you, for all of us to get to know you a little bit more. And also as a fellow creative, I think, you know, it's always really nice to talk to other artists.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. So did you always know you were an artist, a creative person?
That's a great question. I would say I always wanted to draw, but I didn't always kind of realize it was a viable path for me. I did grow up watching Sailor Moon cartoons, and that's kind of like where the watercolor influence has seeped through into my brain. And I think ever since like being a little kid and watching that cartoon, I always wanted to do art. It just took me a while. I took a couple of detours to get here.
What were you doing before the art? If that was, is that your full-time job?
Yeah. So actually I went to school for marketing and business, and like being an immigrant and having immigrant parents, it kind of was guided towards, you know, a more secure path, whatever that may be. But went and like worked for different agencies in the marketing world for a while, and then eventually just found my way back into art because I just couldn't ignore that.
It draws us back.
Oh yeah.
I had similar. I kind of was always in denial that I was an illustrator because I didn't know it was a job. I didn't know you could do that in real life, right?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of creatives kind of go through that, you know, growing pains a little bit, you know.
Absolutely.
So you said you were always interested in watercolor because of Sailor Moon. Is it your main medium, or do you kind of play with other stuff?
I would say that's become my main medium. Ever since I rediscovered it, I fell in love with the idea of like, you can open up a palette and start painting. It's so easy to just do something creative, even if you don't have a lot of time. Whereas with other, like, you know, acrylics or oils, I felt that just took too much time and prep work, and you have to be careful because it could get on your clothes and
it never dries on time. Like it takes like weeks to dry.
Yeah. I don't have time for that.
I don't have time for that either.
No. So give me like a quick something creative, but still like I love the flowiness of the watercolors too. I find it so soothing, and they just very like, I don't know, artsy and relaxing, and it's such a nice way to do it fast and like not feel like you have to dedicate like a whole hour or even just like 5 minutes. I feel like it makes such a big difference.
Oh, I agree with that. And so how did you kind of stumble more into focusing in food?
Food. I always loved food and like just had this like deeper connection to it, but it took me a while to realize why. I will say that like the past 2 years, because it's just been such a weird period of time, I had some time to reflect upon that. And I'll have to say that like the reason why I feel so drawn to food was because when I was growing up in Moldova, I'd go visit my grandmother, and she had this gorgeous garden filled with like all kinds of fresh fruits and veggies. And I think just that memory of kind of being around the fresh produce and all those different colors and just like such a tactile experience. So I'll say like that's kind of reflecting back on that throughout my whole life. That's been the one thing that kind of kept me attracted to food. And now, of course, I just love to go to grocery stores and look at produce. Like when I'm feeling down, that's what I do because it just like cheers me up.
Yeah, and I think food has a lot of personality, actually. Of course, anywhere from fine dining to like street tacos to grocery store produce. I feel like you could draw this like an apple 100 different ways, and it's always going to be a different apple.
Exactly.
I think that's what's really nice about drawing food is it changes a lot. So I know behind you, you have your watercolor snacks book. Congratulations on that. What was that process like? I've always kind of, dreamed in the far future that I will have a book of some sort, but that seems very far and very daunting. What was that like for you?
Oh my gosh, Nancy, you should totally do a book. It's not very far and it's not super daunting. You can do it. The reason like how this came about, so about 4 years ago when I was kind of transitioning into, I was doing like part-time marketing job, freelancing, and transitioning into more of an artist career. And I didn't know what I was doing at the time. Honestly, I was just like, I'm going to try a bunch of different things. And one thing I knew for sure is that I love to share my love of watercolors with people. So I created a couple of classes on Skillshare, which is such an awesome platform if you want to learn any type of skill set. Like it's like Netflix for anything you want to learn. And that's how my publisher found me. Last year, they somehow stumbled upon one of my Skillshare classes that was honestly like 3 years ago. I feel like my art has improved a little since then. And it was just so weird that they're like, we saw your class and would you want to write a book? And I'm like, but how did you think this is good? Like, because it's like, it's like 3 years ago, obviously my skill set has improved and it's just such a weird way for them to have found me. But I share this to say that like, you never know, like just be brave and put out stuff in all kinds of different ways. And then you just never know who's going to stumble upon what you create and think that, hey, this could make a great book. So maybe we should work together.
Well, that obviously speaks to your talents that they can't, found you 3 years ago, because it's funny, I also myself think I'm like, I would be very upset if people like how different my stuff has changed in the last couple of years to where we are, today. So last question, what are we painting today? I know Carrie mentioned, but I know we had some latecomers.
Yes, so we're painting a stack of Macs, which I think these Macarons will go very well together with our Bouvet glasses, if you have some.
To that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So I'm really excited. I'll share a couple of kind of basic watercolor techniques and like give you an opportunity to everyone to kind of get acquainted with their watercolor supplies. And then I'll show you how to sketch this little painting.
Perfect. Well, everyone, please, we'll pass it off to Volta. And, if you're going to share any of your art, please hashtag Bouvet Bubbly and, do a little shout out to Volta. So I'll pass that off to you and I can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So let me, I will switch over to my other view. Here we go. All right, so we'll be painting this stack of Macs, but before we do that, grab a sheet of paper. So we'll do some practice little watercolor techniques, and please feel free to interrupt me and ask me any questions. Honestly, like I do not mind, and if I am going a little too fast, just jump in and say, Volta, slow down, because I get so excited with like painting that sometimes I just get carried away. But please, this is like a very chill zone. So if you need to be like Volta, you need to chill and slow down, just let me know. All right. So I think some of you guys may have these water brush pens. So if so, then you probably have filled it up with water. I really like to use these for for food illustrations because it's so convenient to already have the water inside. There's no opportunity for the water to get muddy or dirty. But if you don't have these brush pens, you probably have one of these traditional watercolor brushes. And one thing I kind of want to warn you, like if you have a jar of water or next to you along with maybe a glass of bubbly, just be sure you don't dip your brush into the bubbly, because that is like my greatest challenge. Sometimes if I have a beverage next to me, I may end up accidentally dipping it in the wrong container. So be aware of that. All right, so we'll get started. The very first watercolor technique, kind of the very basic one, is called wet on wet. And we'll get started by just basically painting with water. So I'm gonna press on my brush pen and add a couple of droplets of water on my paper. And then I'm just gonna kind of spread it around. So essentially we are just, so you should see kind of like a nice glisten on your paper. And then we're gonna grab any color of your choice. I'm just gonna grab this magenta because it shows up really well on camera. So gonna grab a little bit of that. And now I'm just going to gently touch the brush to the paper in the area where I added some water. So once you do that, you'll notice that the color is starting to spread out. There's like a very kind of flowy surface, like it's very much kind of like the watercolory, very natural. And it's essentially like we're letting the water do all of the work here, because we're just adding a little bit of color. And you can even, if you have a brush pen, you probably will need a paper towel to wipe that off. And you can always go in and kind of like help this color like spread out. Or you can also add another droplet of water and kind of see the result of that. And essentially I wanted to show you this technique is it's very much one of the traditional watercolor looks where it's very, very organic and very soft looking. Whereas the opposite technique to that would be, if I'm going directly and grabbing a color in my palette. So, and I'm just gonna directly paint on dry paper. So this technique is called wet on dry. And I wanted to show you the difference between the two. So, the first example will look very, again, soft. And almost like the edges are gonna look very soft and you can hardly see some of them. Whereas in the second example, you can really see the edges. They're very pronounced. And of course, the color is even, a little darker. So in today's session, we'll be painting the macarons. We'll be using the wet on dry technique because I recommend to use this technique when the area that you're painting is a little, it's not very large. So these are fairly smaller shapes that we'll be painting today. And if we were to use the other technique, it just would be a little bit harder to control. So just wanted to show you the two different ways. You absolutely can try this technique if you want, but I would recommend doing the wet on dry. All right, so then the next technique is going to be an ombre effect. And again, I'm going back into my palette, just gonna grab more of this magenta color. And I'm just gonna do kind of like a little rectangular shape, something like this. Just a little random few series of brush strokes, and it's on dry paper. And now I'm gonna clean off my brush pen, or if you have a traditional brush, just clean it up in your jar. And then I'm going to come in right underneath of this shape with, my bristles are damp, so there's a little bit of water on the brush. Now I'm just gonna press down and kind of do the left to right motion. But at the same time, I'm going to drag my brush pen downwards. So you'll start to notice that even though like I just barely added a little bit of water right underneath of this shape, it's essentially the water starting to pull some of the color towards it, and it's creating like a really nice gradient from a very saturated version of the color to almost like completely transparent. So essentially with watercolors, the more water you add, the lighter the color will appear. And if you have less water and more color, then the more vibrant your colors will look. All right, and then the other technique that's kind of similar to this one, just slightly different, is softening a line. So I'm gonna grab some color here and just gonna kind of sketch just like a little brush stroke, little line, doesn't have to be anything. Then I'm gonna clean off the brush pen again. And again, like kind of like how we did it in the previous example, I'm gonna come right underneath of this line and essentially do the same kind of like left to right motion with my brush stroke and soften the edge. So because sometimes like we may end up with some watercolor lines that are maybe too pronounced for our liking. So then the way it's super easy to fix, even if your colors have, or your sketch has already dried, for example, you can still go back in and soften any of the lines because you're just kind of activating the colors with a little bit of water and your brush, and then you can eventually like get to this like much softer watercolory look. All right, is everyone doing okay? All right, I will take that as a yes. Awesome. All right, so then let's see. The next watercolor technique is going to be adding a shadow, or sorry, adding a highlight, and then we'll do the shadow later. So again, I'm gonna just stick with my this one color here, and I'm gonna paint a little kind of circular shape on dry paper. So right now you'll notice that it's looking kind of flat. It's just like a little circle, watercolory circle, looks kind of like has an even wash. So a really easy, simple way, no matter what object it is that we're painting, you can always add a little bit of a highlight to make the object more dimensional. So I'm going to clean off my brush and I'm going to pretend that my light source is coming from this direction, from the left-hand side. I'm going to press down on the brush and kind of drag it along and then lift off. Then I'm going to clean it again. So it's very important so essentially like you're pressing down, like applying a lot of pressure on this, and you're dragging it along to kind of follow the shape of the object. And then you're also going to make sure to clean off the brush, because otherwise you would be reintroducing the paint back into the shape when the whole point is to lift it off so that you get those nice little highlights. So for example, on this Bombe bottle, that's exactly how I did it. I painted with green first, and then I lifted off. Since the shape of the bottle is more like rectangular, I lifted off kind of like a line a long ways. And for the macarons, we'll be doing the same thing. We'll be lifting off just little bits of highlights so that they all match, since the light source is hitting them. And again, wanted to emphasize this is a really easy way to, no matter what you sketch, just like little bits of techniques that you can use to really make your illustration kind of come alive or pop off the page. All right, and then the other technique that would be opposite of it is kind of having a shadow area. So again, going back to my color, I'm going to do another circular shape. And without getting too into like color theory and it's the boring stuff, a really easy way to add a shadow is just go back into the same color that you're using and just add another, just drop like more color and add another layer so that you can have a really nice contrast between the two areas. So you could either, clean off the brush and lift off a highlight, or if you want it to be super saturated or super vibrant, you would just add in more of the pigment, less water. So more color and less water. So that way, again, you have that nice kind of transition from like a darker area to a much lighter one where you can see there's like a light source hitting it. All right, and then let's see. I wanted to show, so if you happen to have maybe a paper towel or some tissue paper nearby, I wanted to show you a quick way. So if there's like, if you have one of those happy accidents, like how Bob Ross would say it, it's, if you, for example, add, say there was like, I don't know, a drip that you didn't want for it to happen. So just like, I wanted to show you a quick and easy way to fix that. So you can grab a paper towel, for example, and literally you can just kind of like press down and lift off. So essentially kind of how we did when we were lifting off a highlight, you can lift off some of the pigment. And it's like a really neat way to essentially kind of like erase your watercolor, mistakes, even though there are no mistakes. Like I think it's all art and it's fun. But if there's like a line, for example, that you aren't happy with and you don't want it to be there, you can always do that. And also you can use your brush to kind of go over some of these lines too and essentially like erase. Of course, in this case, like it is important to have really good watercolor paper. So 120 pounds is what I would recommend. And otherwise, if you do a lot of this kind of motion where you're erasing or lifting off, it could kind of go through the paper. So just depending on what kind of paper you're using. All right, so, okay, one last watercolor technique before we get into the macarons. And that's adding kind of like a cast shadow. So how we have it here, there's like a little bit of a gray area. And a really easy way to do that is, so I'm gonna grab this shape because it's already dry for me. And I'm just gonna add a little bit. So basically kind of paint with water, just a little bit kind of underneath the shape and off to the side. Since my light source is coming from this direction, it's gonna cast a little shadow on the object, like so that it's a little bit behind it. And then I'm gonna grab a little bit of gray from my palette, or any black color, or even like a dark brown will work too. Just make sure to add a few droplets of water so that it's fairly light or diluted with water. So then we can take that mix and just add it just a little bit kind of underneath our little shape here. And again, that's another like little trick that you could do to instantly like make any shape kind of pop off the page, because it has like already like a shadow, it's not floating in space. And you can also take your, clean your brush pen, and then you can soften the edges just so that, it looks more like a shadow where it's like diffuse and not super pronounced. So again, we would be using the technique that we did here, where you can soften one of the edges just to give it that softer kind of like diffused look. All right, so let's see. And so, okay, I think we're ready to go into the macarons now. Does anyone have any questions, or can I go over any of the techniques or anything like that? let's see. I don't see any questions in the chat. All right, awesome. Ready? Okay, sounds great. All right, so I'm gonna grab another sheet of paper. So I do recommend sketching this. So I'm going to use a pencil and recommend to use it just so that we kind of have a baseline of what we'll be painting. It's just, it'll make the experience a little easier. And I'm going to I'm using a really dark pencil and I'm going to press down really hard just so that you guys can see it really well on camera, because it is pencil and like it could look a little lighter. But essentially to sketch out this, we're going to start with the first shape. So that's essentially like a little oval shape and it's kind of narrow, and a really approachable way of sketching an oval is going to start with a little horizontal line. Kind of like this. And then I'm just going to eyeball it and see where like the center is, and then I'm going to do another kind of vertical line that's just going to be a lot shorter than the first horizontal line. So just this is kind of like a little baseline for the macaron, and then we can erase those lines later. And then let's see, to continue on to the oval, I'm just going to do a few kind of like basically connect these points together, but with a series of rounded curves or rounded lines. So then it's going to look something like this. And you'll want to make sure like the edges kind of are rounded as well. So if you need to, just kind of go over them. So we have kind of the main shape here. And then for the kind of, I call these Macaron skirts, and I apologize if there's a Macaron connoisseur on this session is probably thinking this is not the right name for him, but this little like wavy line that you see, like the texture of the shell underneath the shell. So that's just going to be like a series of just literally like a wavy line that follows along like a little skirt on the top shell. And then let's see, we can add two kind of parallel lines that show the filling. So that's going to be like the middle part of it. And then for the bottom shell, it's essentially going to be kind of like, if you look at this oval shape, it's just literally going to be half of it. So it's going to be like a half of an oval that's going to be as wide as the first shell. And then the bottom line is going to be kind of more of a straighter line across like this. And then again, we're going to have another series of this wavy lines for the other shell. And there's no right way or wrong way of doing these. These are just going to be like a few little squiggles. Oh, feet. Okay. Okay, cool. Now I learned something. Thank you. Little macaron feet. Oh, I love that. All right. So now, now that we have this kind of sketched out, we can erase the guidelines. And we'll proceed. So I'll just kind of walk through the next two, and you're welcome to, do as many macarons as you'd like. It's really fun to do a whole stack of like a large, like, I don't know, like 10 in a row, and use a bunch of different like colors and make it look like a rainbow. That's super fun. But we won't have time to do all of those. So I'll just do 3 for now, and hopefully you'll get inspired to continue on with your macaron journey in watercolors. All right, so the second macaron, like it's also gonna, follow the same structure. You're gonna have an oval. The only difference is like that oval shape is gonna be a little bit like behind the first one, because essentially we just want to like show that it's sitting on top of the other. So it's kind of got a little bit like cut some of that edge off. So let's see, I'm gonna again sketch out a little horizontal line. Then one right across, a vertical, and then connect these lines. And then back to the macaron feet. So that'll just be these wavy lines, and then the filling, just two parallel lines down, like vertical. And then again, back to the shell here. So that's just going to be like a slightly curved line, or, you know, if you want to look at it as half of the oval from the top shell. And back to the feet. And again, I'm just going to erase these lines. And if you, sometimes like people ask me, you know, how do I get rid of pencil marks when I'm painting? It really is like, sometimes it could be a style choice where you can really see the pencil lines. If you're not a fan of those, my recommendation would be to sketch really lightly with your pencil, and maybe even sometimes erase some parts where you can, okay, I know what that's representing, so you can erase that and then paint on top, or paint several layers of watercolor, and that usually will cover up the pencil marks if you're not a fan of those. All right, so let's see. I think we'll just paint these two, because I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and it just looked over. It's like I think we have 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure we have time to paint them. But essentially, like, does anyone have any questions as far as like sketching out these macarons? If I can explain anything, or are we good to?
I think everything's looking good.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So let's start painting then. So we'll just have, in this example, we'll just do two of them. So I'm gonna go back to this color, the magenta, the very like fuchsia pink, because it's one of my favorite colors, but feel free to use a color of your choice that you like. So let's see, I'm gonna grab a little bit of color on my brush, and since my light source is coming from the left-hand side, and by the way, your light source can vary, is just in my example, I happen to be left-handed, and it's just a lot easier to like have that from the left. But you can, so we'll actually start painting on the opposite side, because the light source is hitting the object on the left, but we want to have the opposite side be kind of darker in color. So it's going to be a little bit more saturated. So I'm just painting directly on dry paper. So adding a little bit of color here. Just covering kind of like about halfway through, and then I'm going to clean off the brush. And now I'm essentially going to like extend. So use the ombre technique that I showed you earlier, essentially kind of like extend a little bit this color into the rest of the shape. And you'll notice that because, you know, you came in with a clean brush, it will have a much lighter area on the left-hand side. And that's where we want our highlight to be. So you can even, if it looks, you know, if the color kind of is seeping through and you're losing the highlight, you can always go back in and like lift off more color to reinforce it. All right, and then I'm gonna just continue on to paint the macaron feet, and I'll just use this magenta pink here. So I'm not gonna keep my like track of the highlight. I'm just gonna cover or paint over this area. Kind of like this. If it happens that, you know, a little bit of color is maybe bleeding into an area where you didn't want it to, you can always come in with a clean brush and lift that off. So essentially, like, we're erasing some of those extra marks where we, didn't want them to happen there. So I'm going to continue on with more magenta here on the right-hand side, the opposite side of the highlight. About midway, then I'm going to clean off the brush and going to kind of drag some of this color. So we essentially want to make sure that the highlights match on every single shape. So they're all from the same side. And then back to the macaron feet, it's little squiggles. And we'll leave the filling portion kind of blank. I think it looks really nice when it looks, when you see that really like huge contrast between the painted area, the unpainted. But if you do want to add a color in the middle, I would recommend to allow this shape to dry completely. Otherwise, the colors will kind of blend in together. All right, so then let's go to the next one, and I'm going to use kind of like an orangey, like a yellow-orange color. Again, feel free to mix it up and use a different color, whatever you have at your disposal. So a similar technique, I'm just going to paint on the right-hand side, the opposite side of the highlight. And then I'm going to clean off the brush and then kind of drag this color into the rest of the shape. Even lift off a bit more color here so you can see the highlight. And then do the same on the bottom portion or the bottom shell. And then drag this one along. And then, of course, gonna go in and add the little wavy macaron feet. If it happens that, for example, this, this shell is not completely dry and maybe the color is getting into your other macaron shell right underneath it, kind of like what happened here, you can always like go over it and lift off that color. I liked this effect because sometimes it's so fun to just, again, like back to those like happy little accidents where you see how the color just plays together and it has that artsy look to it. But if you're not a fan of this look, all you have to do is just kind of go over and lift off any of the like extra color that you don't want in there. So essentially like removing any of the extra color, allowing it to dry, and then you'll just repaint that area. So for example, in this example, I can, if I can go back to, this is completely dry, so I can grab more of this magenta and I can actually paint right on top. So that will also, adding a second layer after it's dry, will also increase that contrast between your highlights and the darker areas, and it will really like just make your, again, make it pop, because it's such a nice like dramatic contrast between a lighter and a darker area. All right, so the last thing is adding a little cast shadow. So again, I have a clean brush and I'm going to add just a little bit, kind of like add a little bit of water around this macaron shell. And I'm gonna grab some gray, so very diluted, like tons of water, so barely visible. And just gonna add it right underneath. And then of course I can clean off the brush and soften this so it looks more like a shadow instead of just a few brush strokes. So I want to encourage you to use like water. Sometimes like if you end up seeing brush strokes or brush marks, that's probably an indication that you are not using enough water. And I recommend use more water than you think you need to, because you can always, like, even if you have like a drop or something, now grab a tissue paper or paper towel, and you can always like absorb that extra water. And then let's see, the final thing that we could do here is totally optional. It doesn't work so well with a brush pen because it needs to have like kind of like dripping water. So I'm gonna show you how I got this like splatter effect. So I basically like dip my brush in water and got grabbing tons of color too. And let me move this out of the way so it doesn't get accidental marks on it. But essentially you can just kind of gently tap on the brush and it will give you like that splatter kind of effect. So I thought that was like a super fun and playful, you know, it was like we're having a bubbly party, so why not have some like little watercolor confetti too. And you could also, you know, if you're had the second macaron, if it was like an orange color, you can also add a little bit of orange, and maybe even like kind of use your whole arm to increase the size of these. It might get a little bit messy on your table, but not too much. I mean, I think it's still like controlled, like a little bit of a controlled chaos. And of course, like if you'd like for these to have like those like drippy effects, you can just grab a little bit of water and kind of add it and tilt your paper and add it into some of those like watercolory kind of splatters to get more of that kind of messy look. All right, how is everyone doing?
That was so fun.
Oh my gosh. Does anyone feel comfortable sharing? Totally no pressure, but I would love to see your macarons if you'd like to like bring them up to your cameras. Oh, let me see. Tracy, beautiful. Robin, Jill, Monica, Diana. Oh my gosh, look at the highlights, and so beautiful. Nancy, oh, I love your macarons. Oh, these are so fun. Oh my gosh, amazing work. I love to see the highlights and like the contrast between them. And I see some of you guys like even worked ahead of me. I love it. Almost everyone pretty much has 3 macarons. Way to go.
Good job, everyone.
Great job. Oh my gosh.
Well, that was so much fun because like we said earlier, it's 8 a.m. here and I don't get to paint that often. And this was like super therapeutic and a great way to start my day. Volta, that was so great. That was so fun. Thank you.
I'm so happy to hear it. Thank you so much for having me again. Like, I love this community. Everyone is so freaking nice and so awesome and supportive and welcoming. And it truly is an honor to be here. Thank you.
Of course. And I couldn't say it better myself, but thank you, everyone. Thank you to Bombe La Bombe for our wonderful little beverages tonight for our sip and paint. And don't forget, if you guys share on social, to just hashtag Bombe Bubbly, because we would love to see everyone's art and everything. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Volta.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I have a quick question if you don't mind staying.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I accidentally colored the middle section that's supposed to be white. And
That's Sari, by the way.
yes. And so I did try to like blot it off like the technique you showed, but it did not work. But I do have white. Do you suggest that I try using the white over it?
Yeah, I normally would not recommend to ever use white, just because with
Okay.
watercolors, the way you represent white is like through the absence of color, essentially. So I would just maybe redraw it, and because sometimes I do find
It
that
looks
like
delicious.
I think it looks super delicious. It looks like an orange filled cream macaron, you know.
Yeah.
It's still enjoy
I
it.
wasn't upset about the extra orange. I love orange, so I just was trying to figure out if the white might be a good technique. But I'll draw more macarons. No problem.
Yeah, there you go.
Looks great.
I would go with the flow. And Sari and Lauren, I know you two are new members, so welcome and thank you for joining. Volta, I learned so much. I have to confess, I thought I understood a little bit about watercolor technique, and I realized watching that I had absolutely no idea. So I'm really excited to try this on my own and do some things. And I think we had some folks out there who are not first-time watercolor artists. Some of those are really, really good, and there's no way you all were doing it for the first time. But if you were, I think there might be some naturals out there.
I was
So,
very impressed.
yes.
So
Same.
impressive. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Do you have your book? Can you hold your book up for everyone?
I do, yes.
So you can get
here, and Macarons is a chapter from the book, but there's like 29 other chapters of your favorite foods in here.
You can get watercolor snacks from your favorite local bookstore. And Volta, congratulations on your book. And thank you again for doing this class for us. Nancy, always wonderful to see you. I don't get to see
Great for you.
you anymore. I want to thank our friends at Bombe and thank you so much to Rachel for joining us earlier. That was a real treat. And I want to, we've got a very Cherry Bombe Friendsgiving coming up. We're going to be kicking it off with our cover girls, Drew and Pilar, next week. So be on the lookout for an email for that. We're also bringing back our pie panel. So if any of you participated in the pie panel last year, it was so much fun. Everybody had a ton of questions. The whole panel is back. Jessie, the vintage baker, Jessie Sheehan, will be moderating again. So that sign up will be going out really soon. And I just want to thank all of you for being amazing members of the Bombe Squad. Like Volta said, this is an incredible community. And on behalf of the Cherry Bombe team and I, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. If you have ideas for other classes that you would love for us to do, just let us know. You all have Donna's email, so you can respond to the emails that Donna sends out and give her a suggestion. If you want some cooking classes, if you want more art classes, wine tasting, we can get Rachel back. Just let us know. All right. So have a beautiful night, everybody, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Bye, Volta.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
Nancy.